Good morning, gardeners. I'm so pleased that you're here today. And what a great presentation that we're going to have with John Bowen about propagation. I'm so happy to have him back with us. Before we get started, I got a few gardening reminders to share with you. For sowing seeds, there is still time to direct sow for late crops of bush beans, cucumbers, summer squash, beets, carrots, and other things. And July is also the perfect time to start seeds for your fall transplants, such as broccoli and cabbage and collards. I filled up the seed box at the Black Mountain Library on Thursday, so please go to the Black Mountain Library and pick up some free seeds. Now for our August sowing circle, we are going to have a saving seed workshop. We are so pleased to have an author and a seed farmer, Bowen Cohen, with us. Now, Bowen's going to explain the importance of saving our garden seeds. He's going to share some stories, and he wants you to bring all your questions about saving seeds to him. It's going to be a wonderful workshop. He is a very interesting man. He is an owner of a small farm. He's from Michigan, and he is the founder of the Michigan Seed Library. Now, Michigan seed libraries have 90 branches of seed libraries. Isn't that amazing? You might have heard of him. He has appeared numerous times in a lot of different publications, including Mother Earth News, the Baker Creek Heirloom Seed Catalog. Plus, he's author of Saving Our Seeds and an herbalist book as well. You can see more of his work at smallhousefarms.com. So that's one of the pluses of having Zoom. We can pull in some people from other states to give us presentations. The workshop is going to be August 14th at 10 a.m. via Zoom. So naturally, our seed library is always looking for seed donations. So if you have any extra seeds, or if you want to buy some extra seeds and share them with us, we'd love it. Thank you. Now, on to the workshop. I'd like to introduce our speaker, John Bowen. John is a Buncombe County master gardener. He's been playing with plants his entire life, although he didn't start working on stem cuttings until just a few years ago. He says he hates seeing all those little annuals ripped out every year when he knows he can keep on growing. He's reached a point lately that when he buys a new plant, one of his first questions is, can I propagate this? I think he just likes the challenge of turning one plant to 2 to 20 to 30 or more. John was a science teacher before he retired here just 5 years ago. Now he gets a mix, a little bit of plant science with a little plant growing, and do some plant experiments in his basement under the grow lights. Science and plants together make him a very happy man. So let's see what we can learn about propagating plants today. Take it away, John.
Thank you very much, Lintel, and good morning, gardeners. I am so happy to see you out here through the miracle of Zoom. And before we get started, I have an important question for you. Why in the world do you think you need to grow more plants? I just can't understand this. But with the miracle of Zoom, I can hear what you're thinking. I can hear you with the coffee cup. You're saying, my neighbor has really cool plants, and I want to get some cuttings and grow them in my yard. You with the funny gardener hat, you're saying, more plants? I always have room for more plants. Over here, somebody's saying, I need to get a cutting off my mother's rhododendron before we have to sell her house. And maybe you're like me. Maybe when fall comes and all the annuals start to die out from the frost, they're not really annuals, they're really perennials that just can't take our climate. You want to overwinter them. And a good way to do that is just to take some cuttings and overwinter them indoors as cuttings. And maybe also like me, you just think it's fun. You like the challenge. You want a chance to do something different. There's so many different reasons to do this, and it can just absolutely be a blast. What I want to do is show you some plants here that I have propagated just to convince you that you really can do this. These are some summer annuals that I did last year, because I love having petunias and those New Guinea impatiens and the begonias in my garden. These are some shrubs, things I propagated last year. I had them just waiting to be planted out. They all need a home. Like a typical gardener, sometimes I can't find space for all of them, but it's just fun to see how many different things I can make and try to find a place to put them. Before we go too far, though, I have to give you a word of caution. This is me a couple of years ago, working in the garden for the first time. My mom says I was calm and relaxed, a pretty nice child. But then I started messing with cuttings. And guess what? This is what happened in my basement. So I'm warning you, if you start playing with cuttings, it can become a habit. It can get in your blood, and it could lead you to something like that. So if you're brave enough, if you're ready to go on, let's take a look at that stem propagation process. There's typically 3 ways that we can simply propagate from stems. One possibility, one we're going to talk about today, is to use rooted stem cuttings. You see 2 cuttings there in my hand. Another way that's commonly done is to use what we call layering. You take a stem, you bend it over, as you see in the picture, you bury it just a little bit in the soil, tack it down or put a rock on it, and after a month or 2 or 3, sometimes at that buried spot, roots will form. Then you can cut it off the mother plant and you'll have a new plant. That works really well for things like hydrangeas, rhododendrons. You can do figs this way. You can do a lot of the ground covers this way. It's a super possibility. It's just not one that we're going to talk about today. A third possibility is to do what we call air layering. You actually go to the aerial part of the plant, you cut the cambium off the stem, wrap it up in plastic with some wet peat moss in there, and after a few months, roots will form at the wound site. Then you could cut it off the trunk and have a new plant. Those are all great techniques. They're all useful. They're just not in our venue today. Today, we're looking at just how to get stem cuttings to root. And let's be more specific. Today, we're talking about what we're going to call greenwood. Greenwood is wood that's actively growing. Sometimes greenwood is softwood, which is right at the very tip of your shoot. It's very actively growing. Sometimes it's what we call semi-hardwood. It's starting to mature, it's getting a little bit stiff, but it's still in that active growth phase. We're not going to talk about rooting hardwood, which is another story, another whole class all in itself. We're going to focus on greenwood today. So let's take a look at the process, look at the journey you would have to go on if you were going to get from a stem to a brand new plant. The first step is that you're going to want to cut a stem. You're going to want to find some particular piece of the plant that you can propagate. Then your second step is you're going to dip that in some sort of a rooting hormone. It's not a have to, and we'll talk about that, but it's certainly a useful step. A third step after you have it dipped in the hormone is to put it in some sort of a rooting medium, the place where the roots are actually going to form. Before you get roots, after you put it in the rooting medium, you're going to cover it. You're going to maintain the humidity, and you're going to do the hardest part of the whole process. You are going to wait patiently for roots to form. That is tough. After you get some nice roots, you'll be able to pot it up, baby it a little bit, and once it matures, you can put it out where it belongs, and you will have a nice new plant. Sound like a simple process? I think it's pretty straightforward, and I'm going to go through it with you step by step by step, and you can see all the parts that we do along the way. A good question you might be asking is, what can I propagate this way? What can I actually grow in this way? Here's a chart of some things that I consider easy to root. These are all things that I've rooted here with the techniques we're going to use. Some of the annuals, petunias work really well. Some of the salvias, coleus. My goodness, you can root coleus just by looking cross-eyed at it. Most of the ground covers will root well. Begonias root, impatiens root. The shrubbier things, Caryopteris roots really well. Asters, all the asters, the frickets, the New Englands, the aromatics, the smooth asters, they generally root really nicely. Rosemary is easy to root. Roses, I know you guys like roses. Everybody loves roses. Roses generally root pretty well if you pay some attention to a few details. The dogwoods root, the yellow twigs root really well. The reds are a little bit tougher, but they'll come along. And hydrangeas. We have so many hydrangeas that grow so well around here, all the kinds, paniculate, the big leaf, the arborescens, they all are pretty easy to root, and they all give you nice plants in a reasonable period of time. So many plants you could root, so many plants you could grow. What shouldn't you grow? 2 answers for you. Firstly, don't try to root poison ivy unless you're particularly mad at your neighbor and you want to put some across the fence, but not recommended generally. And don't try to propagate patented plants. So how would you know? Well, here you see this hydrangea fire and ice that I pulled out of a catalog. And at the very end where the red arrow is, you see a PP 26005. That PP is the plant patent. Someone developed this plant. They worked hard to make it what it is. They put it out into the plant marketplace. And for the next 20 years, they are protected from people propagating without paying them a license fee. So if you see a PP on your tag when you buy it, don't try to propagate it. If you need to go back and look at some of the things that are on the internet, you may have to look at 6 or 7 catalog sites to be sure if it's a new plant. And eventually you'll see somebody will have the good graces to put that PP number there and tell you that one is a patented plant and you shouldn't propagate it. You might also see some like this Prosma, the specific sunset, that are labeled PPAF, plant patent applied for. When this was printed, that number had not yet been issued. It's coming. So good gardener etiquette says you should not try to propagate those patented plants. There are so many that aren't patented that you will stay busy enough without having to go there. We're going to talk about this whole process now. And I said earlier that we were going to talk about rooting greenwood. I think it's fair to make it really clear here the difference between softwood, semi-hardwood, and hardwood. So I brought in this giant stem for you today. You can see it's pretty immense. I want to show you the hardwood and the softwood. It's tricky because this whole stem, as you see, is green. And I'm saying, well, I want greenwood, not hardwood. Well, it's all green. So what am I talking about? And here's what we know. The bottom part of this stem is actually last year's growth. I know that because I know where I cut it back. This is last year's growth. And I can tell that it's hardwood because if I try to bend it, if I do what I call the 90-degree test and try to bend this guy to a 90-degree angle, it is really hard. And you can actually see there that the stem is kinking. If I take it a little bit past, it's going to break on the back side. That's a hardwood stem. That is too hard to root now in this season. As I come up this next section between these two nodes, this is also a hardwood stem. If I come farther up, right there, I hope you can see this, right there, that was where last year's growth stopped. So everything above that, everything going out this way is this year's growth. This is semi-hardwood. I'm going to snip off this piece right here for you, so we can see it a little better. This is semi-hardwood, and I can bend it. I can do the 90 degrees on it, and it pops back. It's flexible. So that flexibility is a good way to tell whether or not you're dealing with greenwood or you're dealing with hardwood. Stay with the greenwood. On this particular stem, this piece is this year's growth growing off the hardwood. This is greenwood. We could propagate this. This is greenwood. This is greenwood. This is greenwood. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 little shoots we could cut off of this piece, and all of these would be easy to propagate. But watch out for that stuff that is so stiff that if you bend it, it wants to kink, it wants to break. Don't try to propagate that with the processes I'm showing you right now. So when we cut the greenwood, we're looking for some healthy tissue. If it's all diseased, if it's brown, if it has lesions on it, it's not going to be a good choice. You want to take your cuttings when your wood is hydrated. First thing in the morning, after a good rain like we had yesterday, hydrated wood is going to give you much greater success. Thicker is better. I'm going to use a pencil quite a bit here as a reference point in some of these slides. If you can get greenwood that's even pencil thickness, that's great. If it's a little tiny piece, there's a fair chance it may rot before it roots, and that's not going to work very well. We want to get a stem that has 3 to 5 leaf nodes on it. That's an optimum number for rooting. So the question we want to ask, the one I want to address here with a bunch of slides for you, is where exactly should I cut my plants to get good cuttings? Let me show you the tools I like to use. At the top, there's my box knife. I use that for the final trimming on some of the cuttings. A good pair of pruning shears and a good heavy pair of scissors. Those 3 are all great tools. First, let's look at a Hydrangea paniculata, the one that's getting ready to bloom right now. They're so common here. They're so pretty. They're so easy to root. And raise that question again of the hardwood versus the semi-hardwood. I cut off this long shoot for you. It's about a 14-inch shoot. I cut it off just to show you this. Normally, if I was propagating, I would not cut off a 14-inch shoot, but I wanted to show you the difference here once again between the hardwood and the semi-hardwood. There's a blow up there where the red arrow is. You can see that spot where my finger's pointing. That's the transition from last year's wood to this year's wood. So anything above that on this stem, the top 8 inches of this is all new wood, it's green wood. It would be great for propagating. I want to get a cutting now that has 3 or 4 good nodes. Count with me now from the very top. You can see the tiny expanding leaf at the top is 1 node, where my index finger is 2 nodes, 3 nodes, 4 nodes. My thumb is underneath the 4th node. That's where I would like to cut this guy. So I get a nice 4-node piece up above. I'm going to cut it there. I'm going to use the box knife. I want a sharp cut. And I expanded the picture for you because I want you to see that I cut about a 1/4 inch below the leaf node, and I cut it at an angle. So why cut it at an angle? Why a 1/4 inch below the leaf node? Well, there's a good reason for that. The reason I like to cut a 1/4 inch below the leaf node is because I can't be sure on a given cutting. I'm just not a smart enough gardener to know where the new roots are going to form. Let me show you. Sometimes you will find that new roots form right at the cut ends, right where you made the cut. And if you're a 1/4 inch below the leaf node and you've got a nice surface there, roots are going to form right there. The leaf node would be up a little bit, and that's okay if the leaf node's up there. But you want that cut surface, cut at an angle to maximize your surface area to get your roots to form. But they don't always form there. On some plants, the roots actually form at the nodes themselves, not the cut surface. So on this one, you can see there's a node right there, and there's a batch of roots coming out. Next to it, a node right there, a batch of roots coming out. So you want to have the node down near the bottom of the stem so that you aren't having a whole long piece of stem underneath the node where roots aren't forming, but you also want to be sure you're not cutting into the node itself. I'm not wise enough to know what's going to happen with any particular plant that I cut. So I cut near the node, but not into the node. And the third possibility is you can have what's called internodal rooting, like I'm showing you in this last example, where the roots form all along the stem. There's a node up there, there's a node at the bottom, and they don't care where the nodes are. They just come out all over the stem. And so for your cutting, it doesn't matter where the node is, so you might as well go ahead and cover your bases and cut it a 1/4 inch below the node. It's generally a safe place to cut. So we've taken our cutting, we've cut it a 1/4 inch below the node, we've made a good sharp cut on it. Next step, we want to strip off the lower leaves, and you can see in the red arrow there where I pulled the leaves off the node. This is a heavy stem, and I just went snap, 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 and snapped them off. So you can see my 2 nodes, and at the top, you see what's left. After you strip the lower leaves, cut them back to like 2/3 of their original size. You don't need the leaves there while you're rooting. They're just a place for things to rot. You just need enough leaf that the plant can pick up some light, and that will help send hormonal signals down the stem to where the rooting is. But you're not trying to photosynthesize, so be bold. Cut those leaves way back, get them out of the way. What we have there is a really nice cutting. You can see there's a pencil for reference. It's not as big as a pencil, half as big as a pencil maybe. That's going to root very, very well. That's the basic process. Let me show you some other examples here and make sure that this is clear to you, because this is an important part of this rooting. Let's look at a Hydrangea arborescens. This one was blooming when I cut it. And I know from where I cut it that everything I'm seeing there is green wood. It's all good wood. So first step, okay, this is a heartbreaker. First step, cut off the flower. Cut off any flower buds. You do not want it to bloom in your rooting media simply because it can make just a moldy mess in there. So the flower has to go off. And now I'm looking for the place where I'm going to cut it. I want at least 3 good nodes. And this particular stem was long enough that there are 2 sections which have 3 good nodes. In the middle picture there, you see my fingers indicating the lower part. Count from the bottom. 1, 2, 3 leaf nodes, 3 places where the leaves are leaving the stems. Going above my hand, going farther up, 1, 2, 3 leaf nodes, even after I cut the flower off. This would make great cuttings. So you can see in the last picture what happened there. I stripped off the leaves after I cut it. I cut the leaves back by 2/3, and I have 2 nice segments, which are, again, half a pencil size. They look kind of odd because the leaves have been cut, but these 2 nice segments both have a very good chance of giving me some new Hydrangea arborescens plant. Those were easy because they were fairly linear stems. They were easy to wrap your brain around the hardwood and the greenwood and where to cut it all. But what if you have something like this piece of my red twig dogwood? Just look at that. You say, oh my gosh, it's a mess. But when you start digging into there, you can see where my two fingers are pointing. You can see dark colored wood and above it, light colored wood. Well, that dark colored wood to light colored wood is the transition from last year's growth to this year's new growth. It's the greenwood. So if you bring your snippers in here and you go through that whole bundle and you snip off every piece, every twig of that light colored greenwood and just leave the old dark wood behind, what you're going to end up with is a whole bunch of pieces like this. And they're going to range in size. Over on the left, you see some that are fairly thick. On the right, you see some that are pretty skinny. I'm going to use them all, even though I know the really skinny ones might be a little bit iffy here. I'm going to take those twigs, I'm going to cut them down to where I get 4 nodes per twig. 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm going to cut right there. I don't need the whole thing. I just want 4 nodes. It's going to look like that after I cut it. Under the circle there, you see my sharp cut about 1/4 inch below the node. That's what I want. I'm also circling that one for you there because I want you to see that even though I stripped the leaves off it, I left 2 little leaf buds that were in the axils there. I don't want those in my media. That's a place for rot to come in. It's not a place for roots to form. So in the very final picture there on the bottom at the right, I've rubbed those off, just taking my fingernail and flicked those off. I want a smooth cutting there. That's what my cutting looks like at the very bottom. I went through every one of those ones that I cut off of that red twig dogwood, and this is what I got. The ones to the left of the pencil are the thicker ones. They're the ones that have the higher possibility of success. My experience with really skinny ones, like the one on the right, isn't so great. But you know, it cost me like nothing to try, and I might get lucky. It might work out. I might end up with 9 new dogwoods, but I'd be happy if even the 3 thicker ones had rooted. That would be success for me. So you can take something that looks really complicated, like that mass of red twig dogwood, and start burrowing in, cut off the greenwood, leave the old hardwood behind, work on the twigs, and you can get an array like this. You notice once again that all the leaves at the top have been cut back. I do not want full-size leaves up there. So getting the idea, it's just a process of narrowing it down and finding the wood that you really need. Let's look at an annual. I love to do petunias. Petunias are one of my favorites. I went out in the garden a couple of days ago and cut this one off. And again, if I were cutting just to propagate and not show you, I wouldn't have taken so much. But I wanted to bring in the bigger piece so you could see easier how the little pieces fit in there. So there's my big piece, and you can see a pencil there for reference. It's maybe 1/3 of the side of the pencil. It's a healthy looking petunia stem. I'm going to cut it right there. You see where the pencil is pointing? That's a stem piece which has 3 nodes in it. I've cut off the flowers. Flowers are gone. Heartbreaker, I know. There's flower buds that I missed, and I will get those as we go along. There's a twig there. There's another twig. I'll show you where those are a little better. My scissors there, my heavy scissors, I'm cutting off that one twig. I'm going to cut off the one a little bit higher and to the right. I'm going to get the 3 that you see in the picture there. And they're 3 or 4 nodes long. They will be great. I see I missed a few flower buds. Oh well, we'll get them. Next step is to remove the leaves. And on petunias, you have to be careful, because if you just grab the leaf and try to tear it down, that leaf petiole is thick, it's stiff, and you can rip the stem in half. So on something like this, rather than tear it off, rather than rip it off, I'll use my scissors, as you see in that first picture, and closely snip the leaves. Try to leave the smallest stubs that I can, as you see in the second picture. It works better to cut them than it does to tear them. Then there's my box knife coming in. I'm doing that angled cut 1/4 inch below the node. I'm going to cut back all the leaves here in just a minute, but I want to show you one more alarming thing about petunias. They are a hotel for aphids. You see all the black aphids on there. If you bring that into the area indoors where you're propagating plants, those aphids are going to spread. So watch your material. You're bringing in field-grown material. Aphids, one of my cups the other day, I saw a couple of mealybugs crawling around. You have to be careful. Look for insects, look for insect eggs. On the petunias, I usually swish them in some insecticidal soap and try to wash all those aphids off. After I do that, I trim back the leaves and cut them back to 2/3 as before. That's what my final propagating piece looks like. And it's a nice little piece of petunia there. You can see the size relative to a pencil. There's a good chance that that one will give me a new plant. I got 3 like that off of that clump of petunia I showed you, and the rest of it was too old, too short. It just was waste material. It would have been better probably if I'd gone out in the field and just cut the 3 I wanted to start with. But again, I wanted a big piece to show you how we work down to where we are. On the left, a nice petunia cutting. I wonder, who here likes roses? Any rose growers in the audience? I see 1, 2, 3, 4, about 17 of you like roses. Well, let me show you about propagating roses. It's a little bit different story, but this has worked well for me. This is a rose cutting I took last week. You can see I've had some insect damage on my leaves. Oh, well, it's roses. Normally, if you're deadheading, you would come down probably to the first 5-part leaf that's pointing the right direction. In this case, if I'd been deadheading this stem, I would have cut it right where the red arrow is. I wouldn't have cut it as long as I did. But for propagating, my experience is that longer rose cuttings work better. So I'm going to go lower. I'm going to go down to another 5-part stem farther down and try to get like a 10 or 12-inch cutting off of there. So this one's probably about 12 inches long. So the first step, after I get a good cutting, cut off all the old flowers. There's my propagation cut. That's where I would have cut the stem to propagate. I wanted about twice as long as I would just for deadheading. There you can see it's actually about 12 or 14 inches long. It's kind of ugly right now, but I'm going to strip off my lower leaves. I'm going to cut a 1/4 inch below the node. You can see it there. And that's what my stem looks like on the left after I've stripped the leaves off. Got my cut below a node. I'm not taking the very bottom of this. The very bottom is what I cut in the field with my regular old pruning shears. It's too coarse. I want to stay with something really sharp, so I'm going to go up a little bit and cut with the box knife to get a really sharp cut. Strip the leaves, and there where you see the arrow pointing, you notice that I left a shoot on there, a nice little shoot that's growing out. I don't want that in my propagating media. So in the next picture, you see that I've broken that shoot off. It's gone. There is still a shoot up at the 7-inch mark there where the pencil is. And that one, plus all the axillary buds you can't see in the leaves, are plenty to give me new shoot growth. I don't want that lower shoot. And then I did one more thing. I did the old florist trick. I put on my gloves and I stripped all the thorns off it, because working in the propagating room with thorny roses is no fun at all. They're soft. Rub them off, get them out of the way. It won't hurt the rose at all to have those thorns gone. And there you have about an 11-inch cutting, longer than I usually do. I'll show you about that in a minute. Odds are that one will give me in maybe 6 or 8 weeks the rose that I could pot up. You see the cutting process, finding the greenwood, stripping off leaves, cutting sharp cuts below the nodes, just making pieces that have 3 or 4 nodes. In a minute here, we're going to put over into the propagating media. Just in terms of the cuttings, just thinking about the cuttings, how you cut them, how you select the right ones. I wonder, do you have questions that I could answer for you now? I'd be happy to give it a shot. Lyndall is monitoring them. If you have a question, put it in the chat. Lyndall, do we have anything going on?
Yes, John, we do. Joanne had a question about greenwood azaleas for cuttings, and how difficult are they to root?
Oh, azaleas are one of my favorites. And the thing about many cuttings, azaleas included, is that there's an optimum time to grab them. You want greenwood. Most people say that they have the most luck with azaleas if they catch them right after they bloom. So for the most of the azaleas, the ones that aren't ever blooming, we're getting a little bit late. It's worth a try. And often they grow slowly enough too that the amount of greenwood you get is relatively small. So I've had my best luck taking azalea cuttings right after they bloom, and typically they're about 3 or 4 inches long. They're fairly short, but I do them exactly the same way. I trim off the lower leaves, cut them below the node, and usually that works. That's on the deciduous azaleas. Some of the evergreen azaleas can be a real challenge, and I have not yet gotten one to work for me. People tell me the same thing, though. Try to get the cuttings right after they bloom. So would I try to get azalea cuttings right now? I absolutely would. And if it didn't work, I would just say, well, okay, it was worth a chance. Next year, grab them earlier. Other question?
We do have one more question, just came in. Mary wanted to know, does the after they bloom apply to roses too?
Well, in a perfect world, you would be trying to get stems that hadn't bloomed. Stems that haven't bloomed seem to work better. For roses, it doesn't seem to make any difference. And the reason I brought up roses like that is that I'm out there cutting my roses anyhow to deadhead them. I'm thinking, well, if I'm going to cut off this much of the rose to deadhead it, if I cut off just a little bit more, since I'm cutting it anyhow, I'll take just a little bit more stem and I can use that for a cutting. They seem to root quite well. So I would say on roses, if you can combine the deadheading and the cutting gathering together, then go for it. If you have roses, you want to do them earlier before they bloom and you want to use purely vegetative stems, that's fine. Same thing, but do cut them a little bit longer. Try to get like a 10-inch cutting if you can, but blooming doesn't seem to hurt them. Other plants, the azaleas are going to be cut after they're blooming. The hydrangeas, better to do them before they bloom, but they root so well, you can probably cut off the blooms. Some other things, I'm looking at a phlox out my window right now. And if I were going to propagate that phlox, I would have taken cuttings earlier, or I would find a stem down lower that's not going to bloom. Because sometimes once they're committed to blooming, they've lost the commitment to form roots. So it really depends on the plant. If you can avoid the blooms, unless it's the roses, enjoy the blooms and use your deadheading as part of your propagation process.
Great, thank you, John. That's all the questions for now.
Okay, well, we have cuttings. We have some nice ones. Here's one I brought in that we're going to play with right here. We're going to stick this one in some media here in just a minute. But before we do, I want to talk a little bit about rooting hormone. One of the things that is useful if you're going to be doing the cuttings is to use a rooting hormone. Let me say right up front, this is not a have to. In the literature, in the references I gave you, there's one article in there that looked at a whole bunch of different plants, and it asked the question whether the rooting hormone was unnecessary, helpful, or essential. Unless you're just an expert on this, it's hard to know, and it may depend on the time of the year, it may depend on the age of the plant, but it almost never seems to hurt. So I'm going to recommend that you buy a little bottle of some sort of a rooting hormone, pick it up, and go ahead and use it. It's a synthetic auxin, a synthetic growth hormone, indole butyric acid. There are a whole bunch of brands and all the nurseries have it. Hormex, Miracle Grow, Garden Safe, Ormond. As far as I know, they're all about the same. This is a powder. We're talking about the powder. There are other ways to go there. We could have a whole program just on other rooting hormone formulations and the things that professionals use. But the hobbyists like me, the powders are really convenient. They come in various strengths. They're inexpensive. A bottle lasts a couple of years. I'll talk about the strength just for a second here, then we'll go on. This is a chart that was put together by Hormex. Hormex makes 5 different strengths of that rooting hormone. Generally speaking, the all-purpose one is with the big red arrow, Hormex number 3. It's 0.3%, 3,000 parts per million. It's the workhorse. It's the one that people use for most of these midsummer soft and semi-hardwood cuttings. Occasionally, I will use the one with a pinkish arrow there, number 8. It's about 2.5 times stronger. It's for things that are a little bit more difficult to root. And I'll grab that one sometimes, not because I know it works better, but it doesn't seem to hurt anything. I don't usually go to the number 16 and the number 30. Those are for things that absolutely don't want to root. And I'm not sure the Hormex is the best way to go with that. It's another story for another day. For what we're talking about, the kinds of things we're doing, where you're just having some casual fun and trying to get some new plants, pick up a little bottle of the number 3. And if they don't have it, pick up a bottle of the number 8, order it online. Either one of those is going to do a good job for you. And I'll show you how to use that here in just a moment. We've made progress here. We've got some cuttings. Now we have some rooting hormone that we can stick that cutting into, and we'll do that. The third step along that road to a successful rooted cutting is the rooting media itself. You have to have something for this plant to be in while it's forming roots. And there are a couple of choices. Sometimes people like to root in water. And let me tell you, rooting in water is fun. I have 6 bottles on the windowsill right now. You can see the roots form. It's exciting. They can get all bushy in there. Some things root so well. Coleus, salvias, the mints. Angel wing begonia root really well in water. People have rooted red twig dogwood in water. I have not. People told me they've done it. Fuchsia triphylla, one that I overwinter every year, roots really well in water, and it's a lot of fun. I recommend trying it once in a while. The downside about rooting in water is that sometimes it's hard to get the plant to make a transition from the water to the solid media when you pot it up. People talk about water roots, like they're a little bit softer or something, and some plants just don't transition very well. So water rooting is fun, but keep this in mind too. Anything that you can root in water, you can also root in solid media. And that's where we're going now. Today, we're talking about solid media. Solid media has maybe 4 functions. It has to support the cutting so it doesn't flop over. It has to keep it upright where the roots have room to grow and the stems stay out of the surface where they would get moldy. It has to help maintain the humidity. It has to hold water because it's the source of the humidity around that cutting that keeps it from drying out. But at the same time, it also has to provide drainage. If too much water builds up in your solid media, then your stems can rot. And you want air penetration. So we want both humidity, drainage, and air penetration. It's a job, and it pretty much requires a fairly coarse media. People use a lot of different things. They all work. Everyone has their proponents. Many people like to use what they call sharp sand or coarse sand. This is not playground sand. Run your hand right between your fingers. It will feel sharp to you. I have not found a good source of sharp sand here in this area. Sand that I thought was going to be pretty good had way too many fines. It was way too dense. I didn't like it at all. But many propagators who find sharp sand like it a lot. You can use perlite. You know perlite. You see it in potting mix. You see the white material there on the left-hand side of the slide. That's perlite. It's an expanded pumice product. It comes in different sizes. It works great. I have rooted begonias in perlite, and they just absolutely love it. It drains, but holds enough moisture. It's a good choice. Vermiculite is another choice. It's an expanded mica product. It works pretty well. I haven't used it very much, although many growers use vermiculite and they like it. You can buy it in the garden stores. Pine fines are often used. Daddy Pete's makes a product called soil conditioner, which is aged pine fine. They work really well. Asheville Mulch Yard sells a triple ground pine. That works pretty well, but I would make sure it's well aged because I've had some of it that felt a little bit warm, like it was composting a little bit. You don't want that to happen in your rooting media. The last one is my absolute favorite. This is the one that I use all the time. It's peat or coconut coir mixed 50-50 with perlite. I'm going to show this to you because it's the one I think does a really good job. I use coconut coir. Peat works just as well. What you don't want to do is use potting mix. Potting mix retains too much moisture. It doesn't let the air get in there. So stay away from your seedling soils. This is a whole different process. If you need to use potting mix as your source of peat, which is a possibility, mix it half and half with perlite. So you get the air in there, you get the drainage in there. Those work really, really well. I want to show you what this media looks like. Let me take you to my work table now. I keep my potting media in a big bin. I'll slide it under here. This is a pretty good sized bin of potting material. And this is 50-50 perlite and coconut coir. You can see the color on it. You can see the brown from the coconut coir. You can see the white pieces of perlite. This is my favorite. And I just keep a bin of this around because I'm going to scoop it up into the cups and use it to do my rooting. It is just slightly moist. I could not wring water out of it, but it's just ever so slightly moist just to kind of keep the dust down. It's my go-to material. We have gotten some good cuttings. We have some rooting hormone. Here's a little bottle of rooting hormone. This is Hormex. It's a little bit blurry for you, but you can see it's Hormex rooting powder number 3. The next job, step 3 on this pathway, is to stick those cuttings into whatever we're going to use to root them. The media container, the vessel that's going to hold it, we're looking for something like this. You can see this in the picture here. We're looking for something like this. A cup, a lid, there's a plant inside there. This is my ideal rooting container. We're going to go through this. It lets air into the media. It lets light in through the top to activate the hormones in the leaves so they can move down the stems. It maintains the humidity. It drains. It's my very favorite vessel for rooting. And what it is is a standard 10-ounce solo cup. Just a plastic cup. It's a little bit flexible. These are great for rooting. Here's how I use these things. First step is I need to get drainage. And of course, a solo cup ideally is not going to drain, or your summer beverage is going to be on your foot. So we need to make drainage holes in it. I'll use a pair of heavy scissors, and I will come to the very bottom edge here, and I'll make 2 cuts, maybe 3/4 of an inch long, like that. There in my hand, you can see one of the pieces I cut off. Let me stick the scissors in there so you can see it better. There, I'm sticking the scissors in through the slot I made. It's a drainage hole on each side, about 3/4 of an inch long. That's all you need. So we cut that, we put some media in it. Bring my media tub back here. I'm going to scoop some in. Typically, I'll get them about that full, about 3/4 full. But there's the media in the cup. I said this media was just damp. At this stage now, I will take it over to the faucet and I will give it a good squirt and wet this media down. It may be the only time I water it during the whole rooting process, but I want it to be damp right now. I'll squirt it down. It'll come out the bottom. That's absolutely fine. So now the next job is to take a cutting, and here's a Caryopteris that I pulled off this morning. What you can see here, if you look carefully with me, there's my cut at an angle at the bottom. There it is, the first nodes. I'm about 1/4 inch below the node. There's 1, 2, 3 nodes that I've stripped the leaves from, and a couple of nodes at the top. This one could have been shorter. I could have cut it right there, and it's going to be a little bit longer than usual, but that's okay. I want to put this into my rooting hormone, but I don't want to just dip it in the bottle because this is wet. It may be contaminated with I don't know what. I don't want to contaminate my bottle. So I poured some of that hormone out into an old pill bottle. I've labeled it number 3, but it's just a pill bottle. There's that much in the bottom. I'll rotate it a little bit, put my cutting in there, rotate it a little bit, shake it off. And what I end up with is a not so well distributed mess of white rooting hormone. It covers the first node. It may cover a little bit of the second node. I'm not going to get it to the third node, and that's okay. Now, I don't know where the roots are going to form on this. They might form at the cut end. They might form at the nodes. They might form along the internodal region, but I don't care. I'm okay either way. So this one's ready to go. When I put it into the media, I use a dibble. A marking pen makes a great dibble because I don't want to just push this down. I don't want to damage the stem, and I also don't want to scrape my hormone off. So I'll push this down. I'm going to put it in, turn it an angle for you. I'm going to put it in so the first 2 nodes, at least, are below the surface. The third node right there is still sticking above. That's okay. It won't hurt anything. 2 nodes under. I'm going to firm that media against it. Push down with your fingers because you made a big hole with the dibble and you want it right against the stem. I could put 2 or 3 or even 4. I don't like 4 because it's too crowded, but I can often put 3 cuttings in here and have plenty of room for roots to grow. Also, this is a quirk. I usually put the cuttings off to the side. I try not to center them right in the vessel because if they're off to the side and they're going to root, quite often I can see the roots right down in here in the container. And if they're off to the side, the roots are closer to the side, they're easier to see. I'm looking for that. So I won't center them. I'll move them off to the 3 sides. I packed it in. And the last step you need to be sure to do is put a tag in there. Tag it with what it is. If you want to tell the world that you use number 3 hormone on it, that's great. Put a date on it just to remind yourself when you put them in, because it's fun to see who gets roots in 3 weeks and who takes 3 months. So a label, a name, a date, and you're good to go. That's one that's been stuck in the media. This is a hydrangea cutting that I also took this morning for you. There's my cut end. There's 1 node. There's 2 nodes. Same process. Dip it in my hormone. I might be able to get hormone up to the second node. It just depends on how far the distance is between them. Making a horrible mess here. Hormone is basically a little bit of chemical in talcum powder, so it's not toxic material. There's another one ready to go. If I had another vessel ready for it, I could scoop some media, dibble it, poke it, try to get both nodes down below. pack it in, tag it, and there's a hydrangea cutting. It will probably give me a new plant. And you see, once again, I put the stem in off center, almost right against the side to increase my chances of being able to see the roots. So those two guys are ready to go. They're ready to go wherever I'm going to put these things. And now the trick is to do the hardest part of all, maintain the humidity and wait for those to root. So how do I maintain the humidity? The media is wet, but obviously it's going to dry out pretty fast. I cover it. And this is the other reason I love solo cups. This is a 10-ounce solo cup. This is a 9-ounce little shorty solo cup. You can see the difference in height on these two. The 9-ounce cups go over the 10-ounce solo cup like that, and they make a lid. So when you're done there, you have it sitting there as a little mini greenhouse. I don't cut holes in the lid, just leave it on. It sits nicely and it will keep it humid in there. If you've done your job, if your media is wet and your lid is snug, stays put, you should be able to see humidity, drops of humidity in there. You want to see that. If you don't see the water inside the lid, then you're going to need to open things up, pour a little bit of water in, squirt it with a hose a little bit, and cover it up again. This is your sign that the cuttings are wet enough, that they have enough moisture in there, that you have a good chance of success. Watch for the humidity on the lids. Now, some of you are saying, uh-oh, you said that you were going to also do a 10-inch long rose cutting. Well, as you have correctly surmised, there is no way that a 10-inch long rose cutting is going to go into a 10-ounce solo cup and have room for that little cap to sit on top. We're about 6 inches too high, and that's going to be a problem. Here's how I do roses. It's just a little bit different situation. For roses, I will use a standard 4-inch black plastic pot, put my media in almost all the way to the top, try to fill it up pretty high, use my dibble, put my rose right in the very center. Don't put it near the edge. I should have dipped it in hormone there. I didn't do that. Put my rose near the center, and it's still about 8 inches sticking up. Find a 1-liter clear bottle. This is an old tonic bottle from my gin and tonic supply. Find a 1-liter clear bottle, cut the bottom out, put it over the rose, and tuck it down into the media so it's well seated in the media. And there you have now a mini greenhouse for a rose or any tall cutting. These work great. Once again, you'll see the humidity build up in there. If things are wet enough, you can leave the cap on to keep the humidity up. If it seems really wet, take the cap off. When the rose matures a little bit and it's starting to show some roots, take the cap off. This makes a great dome for a cutting that's just simply too tall. How long do you have to leave them? How long do you have to wait, twiddle your thumbs, wait for something to happen here? Ideally, you want to see roots form. How might this happen? Well, you can look at the sides. I look at this one. If you look right here, you can see these white threads. Those are roots that have formed on this. And this is why I like this dark media, because those white roots show up really, really well. I'm looking for something like that. Sometimes you'll see it and that's a sign, I've got roots in there. Occasionally it will be really astonishing and you'll have great big roots in there. You can see the brown roots in there. This guy's absolutely ready to come out. This is a viburnum, used to be called trilobe. It's the American cranberry. And it's just rooted really well in there. It's giving me a nice set of roots. That's what you're looking for. Occasionally you won't see that. You can take the shoot, if you don't see the roots, you can take it and you can give it a very gentle tug. You're not trying to pull it out. If you pull it out, you'll break roots off, but you're feeling the resistance and trying to see if it has resistance, if the media is kind of moving with it or it's just sliding out. You develop a feel for that and you can tell on a shoot how that's doing. Another target is you want to see new growth. If you're getting new top growth, that's a sign that you probably have root growth. It's not always the case. Roses will pop up new top growth and not root. But if you do see new top growth, that's a really good sign. The last thing you do, if you just aren't sure, if you just want to know what's happening, you can dump it out very gently and take a look at it. Let's do that on one of these. Just show you what's happening. This is a Caryopteris, I would say. I'm going to dump it out. Let's just look at what's going on. Squeeze it a little bit. Dump it out. There I have a pretty nicely rooted plant. Shake that off a little bit. You can see it better. quite a few roots there. This one's ready to go into a 4-inch pot. This one has even more roots. And look what's happening up here, way up here, out of the media. Can you see that? We're getting roots forming on the stem because it was so humid in there. This guy really wants to root, and he's absolutely ready to go into a bigger pot. The third guy is also really bushy. Sometimes you'll dump out 3 plants, 1 will root, 2 won't. Why won't 2 root when 1 did? Beyond me, but that happens. These guys are ready to go. This is what you're looking for. You want to wait 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 6 weeks, 8 weeks. If it doesn't happen in 8 weeks, it might not happen. And if you dump it out, you see a little tiny root, it's not enough, very gently put it back in, pour some fresh media on it. Those new roots are tender and you can break them off. So be extremely gentle. These 3 guys are totally ready to be potted up. And that's your last step before you get a field plant. I usually will go into a 4-inch pot. I will usually use a good potting soil in a 4-inch pot. I will try to keep them in the same place they were before. Keep them out of the sunlight. Let them acclimate because it's a shock going from the rooting media into soil. Keep them moist. If they start to wilt, if the tops look really wimpy, cover them. Put the bottle on them again. Do something to them to keep them from drying out too much on the top. But for the most part, if you have nice fruits like that, they will take really, really well and you'll be off on your way. A piece of this that I didn't talk about and I should have is where do you put these things after you have them in their little mini greenhouses? Where do you keep them? And the answer is, ideally you keep them around 65 to 70 degrees. You can keep them indoors on a windowsill. I keep mine downstairs in my basement under lights. You can keep them outdoors, but not in the sun. Keep them in the shade. Our temperatures outdoors right now are pretty good. And you could just have a line of these lined up on the north side of your house and they'd be doing fine outdoors as long as the wind doesn't come and blow your tops off. You don't want direct sun. You do want bright light. Leave them there until they root. Try to avoid tugging on them too much, although you have to tug on them some because you're a human being and we human beings are extremely curious people. That's basically the story. Pot them up, treat them like you were hardening off a plant, watch for wilting, and eventually you'll get them out where they're ready to go out into the garden. You will have a new plant. It'll be beautiful and you'll be so excited because you grew it from those things that you wanted to get a plant from, and it'll be your favorite place to walk by in your whole garden. I promise you. We're running out of time here, and fortunately, we've also accomplished our purposes of showing you how to get from cuttings to rooted cuttings to final plants. I probably forgot 1 or 2 important things, but that's why we have questions. So Lyndall, what questions do we have?
Well, John, we've got a couple questions for you. One's from Sandra, and she says, once you put the cuttings into the damp medium, you don't ever water it again?
Oh, good question, Sandra. I watch it carefully, and as long as I can see that humidity up on the caps, I showed you that, as long as I can see humidity on the cap, you can kind of see it there, it's pretty good. I will watch the weight too. And if they start to feel really light, if they're just not heavy enough, I'll take it off and just squirt a little bit of water in there and put it back on again. But generally, it works better if the media is not super saturated because you're just trying to keep the tops humid. And if you've got droplets forming on there, you're probably wet enough. Sometimes they'll go 6 or 8 weeks and I won't add any water at all. Sometimes it'll feel a little dry and I'll add some. Just watch it and realize you're not watering a house plant. You're not watering a garden plant. You're just trying to maintain a humid environment. So don't get carried away. And the drainage lets a lot of water out. So if you do water it, it should come pouring out the bottom.
And she also wanted to know now you would place that in an area that has indirect sunlight, correct?
Yes, you want to place it where you have bright light. So a north window is good. Even a west window is okay if it's indoors, but outdoors, no direct sunlight because that sun can overheat it too soon. You can't handle the high heat. You don't need the sunlight to make things happen. You just need light. Don't put them in darkness. Don't root them in the closet. You want the leaf to get some light stimulation because that helps it develop hormones that it sends down the shoot to where the rooting is happening.
Great, thank you, John. Our next question is, can you use the same technique on mountain laurels?
I have tried mountain laurels, and I've only tried it one time this year because this is the first year I've had mountain laurels to give it a shot. and they are sitting there and they haven't rooted yet. I'm going to suggest that it's something you could research. I have recommended in the references a book, which is from the American Horticultural Society. I think you can see it there. Plant Propagation. Alan Toogood is the editor. It's in the reference pages. And this is just absolutely full of specific details on all kinds of plants. So I would check a good reference source and see what they say about mountain laurel. If I was just experimenting, I would try to treat it like an azalea and probably take the cutting after it bloomed. That's what I did on mine. And so far, they just haven't rooted. It's been 8 or 10 weeks and they haven't rooted yet. So I can't tell you from experience. It may take some research.
Okay. And I bet you if you don't have that book on your shelf, you can probably pick it up at the library. So
I bet the Black Mountain Library could get it for you.
Yes.
And
So
if all their copies are checked out and they're all totally gone, I think you can also find them online as used books very inexpensively. It's absolutely worth having in your library.
yeah, definitely. It's a good resource. Well, John, that is the end of our questions for today.
I hope that means that I anticipated and answered some along the way. It's a fun process. I look forward to the day when we can all get together without mask in person, and we can actually do this as a workshop. You guys can bring in your cuttings and I'll bring some rooting hormone and we can send you all away with an army of little greenhouses. That day's going to come. But between then and there, it's a simple process. Get good cuttings, use some hormone, make sure your media has some air and some drainage. Be patient, don't give up too soon. And the most important thing is just try it, because I know if you don't try it, they're not going to root. And I know if you do try it, there's a fair chance they will. And if you can get half of them to root, you are doing wonderfully well.
Well, thank you so much, John.